Hi everybody, welcome to our counting video. Counting is really important. It's one of the three main things that children really need to understand to build on in their maths journey. The other two being place value and number bonds. So now I'm going to pass you over to Pam, who's going to tell you what you need to know as adults about counting.
Just like we did last week with the place value, the first thing we're going to look at is what you need to know before you come to with your child. So again, I'm going into the other side of the website where there's lots and lots of information for you as an adult to refresh your memory. And first of all, we're just going to watch a little video that Anne and I made, basically just about counting. Hopefully it won't take ages to come down from wherever it is, but sometimes it does. But as Anne said, counting is so important, and it looks like just like a little thing. You know, everybody can go 1, 2, 3, 4, but actually it's underpins so much maths. Even when your child gets to be 14, 15, 16, a good base in counting is really, really helpful. That's why we like to plug it so much. Hopefully the video will start. This is just a little video.
The importance of counting. Why does your child learn to count? Counting is one of the three fundamental concepts that your child's future mathematical learning relies on. The other two are number bonds and place value. Learning to count is a child's first step into maths and constitutes the most fundamental idea of maths. Learning to count is a developmental process that all children go through in the same order, but not necessarily at the same speed. Your child will need continual practice and reinforcement of activities that support his or her movement through this process. Counting is fundamental in establishing an understanding of the many ways numbers relate to each other. Counting is fundamental for understanding our number system. Counting is important for solving mathematical problems. It's also important for efficient mental calculations and contributes to children's understanding of formal mathematics. Please see the counting poster.
Now we're just going to go actually and look at that counting poster that was mentioned there, because when children count, they all learn the process. They go through a process of learning how to count. Oops, don't know quite what's happened here, but as usual, I'm having my right.
Well, as we've said before, we're teachers. We're not technologists.
I think if I go up there, maybe, right, here we go, you see, there it is. So again, I'm going back here, back to, this is maths that helps me help my child. And we've got, as well as that video on counting, we've got two posters. The first one is called Progression in Counting, because each child goes through the same process as they learn to count, and they go through in the same order. But like any other thing your child learns to do, they don't do it at the same rate. So some children, all children start at the string level. So basically what that means is your child can sing the song of counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however high they can go. It is literally just like a song. It's just words that they are putting together. They string them together, they run them all one into the other, and they don't really mean anything to them, even as individual words. Then we come to this one, unbreakable list level. So your child starts to realize that each one of those bits of the string have a meaning, and so they can say each one separately. But if you stop them, say they're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you stop them and you say carry on, they can't go 10, 11, 12. So they just, that's why it's called unbreakable. The next one is the breakable chain level, where your child can start to count from any number. You see, I told you it was more complex than it seemed. So instead of always starting from 1, you've got to give your child practice in starting in other numbers. And to begin with, they won't be able to do it. Even if they only understand the numbers up to 10, you can still get them to practice this, because you could say, oh, let's count on from 5, 5, 6, 7. And you see, then it becomes obvious how useful counting is, because actually what you're doing there is you're beginning to do some adding, but you're still doing it under the guise of counting. The next one is numerable chain level.
Yeah.
So then they can count from 3. And so then, instead of 3 being the third number, 1, 2, 3, they begin to understand that 3 is the first number. They're counting from 3. So 3 counts as number 1, as the first number. 4 is the second number. 5 is the third number. Again, that's what they're doing when, you know, you want to add 2 to 3. So you go 3, and then you find the third number. That's how, or the second number from there. And then when we say our children can count properly, is when they can go up and down in any direction from any point, be interrupted or whatever, and can still carry on. Now that's counting in 1s. When your child comes to counting 2s or 5s or 10s, they go through that process again for each of the numbers that they're learning to count in. You don't need to know the names of those different stages, but you do need to know that your child, that you can expect your child to go through those stages.
Yes. And your
So
child won't even know they're doing it.
As well as that, and remember, every child goes through it in the same order, but not at the same rate. And as well as that, with counting, there's also different contexts for counting. So far, we've seen the different stages that your child will go through when learning to count. And now we're going to see different types of counting your child will do. Now, this was put on here, as I say, for parents of children who were at school. It's useful for you because you are responsible for your child's understanding of counting. You're not just supplementing what's happening at school. You are their fundamental maths guru. So the more you know about maths and about how children learn maths, the better it's going to be for how your child learns, for how your child approaches maths. So again, you don't need to know these, but it's good if you can remember them, because then you can give your child experience of each one, each kind. So again, first of all, sequencing. That's learning by rote how the numbers go one after the other. The context, counting context, that your child, number words are applied to objects. Your child may move the objects or point or nod at them. So basically, that's counting. We start with moving objects, but if you're counting trees, obviously they can't move the trees, so they point at the trees as they run along, or if they're counting cranes in the distance, they'll either point to them or they'll nod at them as they're counting. So they're actually doing something for each time they count.
Yeah.
Cardinal context. Now, the best way to explain this is if you got your child to count some objects into a box, that's the counting context. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. The 5 objects that are now in the box that you've done the counting context with, that's now cardinal, because those 5 objects are the thing now, a thing on their own. You're not going to count them anymore. They're just 5. So it's a set of objects. We've got 10 toes. We've got 2 hands. We don't have to count them. But if we want to know how many, then we might have to count them. But that's the cardinal concept. So it's a number of objects that are together in a group.
Yeah.
Measuring. Children always have to count when measuring. Measuring length, measuring mass, measuring volume. Great context in which to count. Ordinal context. Order. First, second, third. So standing in a line, standing in a queue, winning the race, who came second, who came third. And then this one, which probably doesn't sound much like counting anyway, is just a number stands for something, but it's non-numerical, which sounds a bit odd, I know. But it means if you're waiting for the 63 bus, it doesn't mean the 62 others have gone before it. It just means that's the bus with the number 63 on it. If you wear size 5 shoes, it doesn't mean that yesterday you wore size 4. It just means that's the number that's in your shoe. House numbers, registration numbers on cars, numbers on buses, or phone numbers. They've got no relationship really to counting, but because they're numbers and they mean something to us, then that's what it's called, non-numerical context.
Yes.
And why don't you say something about counting backwards and forwards?
Yes, we always encourage children to count back from a number as well as forwards. They get plenty of practice counting forwards, and quite often they don't get the experience of counting backwards enough because there is no neurological reason at all that they can't count backwards. It's just as easy. And if you start that with the string, it becomes quite normal to them. They will count forwards and backwards. And it's very useful for calculations and everything else. But as I say, there is no reason why not. We tended to forget about that. It was only pointed out to us quite late in our careers that because teachers tend not to do that, because you just don't think about it. But it's really important that when you can count forwards, you count backwards. So every time you do some counting, do it both ways, please.
So, when's your child ready to count? Whenever.
Yes.
I've been up and downstairs with, my baby granddaughter, baby grandson in my arms going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and counting the stairs. It's about hearing the string. Obviously, it means nothing to them, but then they just get into the habit. Whenever I read a story, I always go, close the book and go, and that's the end of the story. And now whenever I read a book to one of my grandchildren, we close the book, they always go, and that's the end of the story, because we've been doing that since they were babies.
Yes.
And although it didn't mean anything to them at the time, it means something to them now. So basically counting whenever you feel like it. So how do we teach it? Well, we start with rhymes and songs. Unfortunately, when you look on YouTube, a lot of those have American accents, but if you look, you'll find some. You can sing your own, you can make your own up.
Actually, that's quite good for the child. If you can manage to make your own up, it makes the child owns them.
So if you look at our counting page.
Yeah.
So now we're going over to the ladder side of the website. Yes. And we're just going to look, and we'll see in red level.
Yes.
Counting goes all the way up our ladder up to blue, but it has more weight down in these bottom rungs.
Yes.
So although number has got about the topic has got about the same number of activity pages within it, it's all slightly differently weighted. So here there are 7 counting activities. So so there they all are. And because this is just the same as all the others, if it's got a number, so counting 1, counting 2, counting 3, counting 4, here they've all got a number on them apart from this one called sabotaging. That means the others rely on something that's gone on a page before, so we need you to do them in that particular order. Sabotaging you can do in any order. So these are all simple counting activities. You might be using objects, you might be moving your child. There's one that uses a number track, so your child can jump up. If you make a big one, your child can jump up and down it. This one, sabotaging. Do you want to tell them about sabotaging?
Yes, sabotaging. It's a big word for something that is actually quite simple. Up to about 6, possibly 7, your child will be able to recognize how many objects or dots or whatever are in a group. Think particularly about dominoes. That's a regular pattern, and your child will learn to recognize that. So if they see the pattern 5, they'll know it's 5. They don't have to count it. 7 is pushing it, but 6 is pretty good. Now that's good for a die because you've got 1 to 6. They'll know it. And eventually they'll be able to recognize groups that aren't set out in that formal way, but not beyond 6. It's very difficult. But sabotaging is just recognizing how many are in a group, either with a regular pattern or an irregular pattern.
And that sort of thing, children kind of just learn, because I know my grandson, who's only 3, he can sabotage up to 3. He can't do it to 4 because I just had a little go with him last week, because I said, oh, how many have you got there? And he said 3, and he did have 3. And then I put another one there and I said, how many now? And he had to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's just a skill. It's useful for children, particularly with those patterns. They use them to make sense of maths, basically.
Yes.
So it is a skill. Anne and I had never heard that term before. And we went on a big long course together, and somebody kept saying sabotaging, and I went to Anne, sabotaging, what's sabotaging, Anne? And she went, I don't know. And we knew by the time it was break time, we knew what the word meant. But it is really, really important. Yes. It's just a skill that is useful for your child, and we maybe don't know how they use it, but they will use it later on in maths. So after we've done all of that, we don't need to look at that anymore. We go on to counting in tens. Now it may seem a bit odd when your child hasn't maybe done anything on place value, but if you bundle up 10 straws and they know there's 10, then we're back to the beginning of that progression in counting string, where they can, progression in counting poster, where they can learn the song. So if you go 10 and then you have another bundle, 20, 30, 40, and every time they put one down, you go and they learn the T numbers. We also go 20, 30, 40, which I'd forgotten about, Anne, but I just remembered as I'm saying that. And
Yes,
as they're counting, if you just go like a cup of tea, it just gives another clue to them,
yes,
that you're talking about the 10 numbers, because to us, T and teen sound different, but children can mix those really easily.
yes.
So if we go 40, then as well as hearing it, they can see the picture clue, and so they know we're talking about the tens number and not the teen number.
Yes, yes. Because we've actually only taught 1 to 9, and now we go on to the tens. We haven't touched the teen numbers yet.
No, and then we don't even do the teen numbers, because maths is all about patterns, and children love patterns, which is why children should always love maths, because they love finding patterns.
Yeah.
Then we give them 1 to 10, which is fine. Then we give them these really weird names that have that have a different pattern. We have 11, no pattern, 12, no pattern, 13, 14. Yeah, I can see a link with 14 and 4. 15, can't see a link. 16, oh yeah, 17, 18, 19, then the pattern starts. 20, 21, 22, 23. And so we miss those teen numbers out to begin with.
Yes.
Because they are so difficult. So we learn the regular pattern and then we come back. And that's when we use a strategy that if children nearly always mix up 13 and 15, always. Sometimes they just miss them out because they don't know which one to say, so they just go 12, 14, 16. If your child struggles with that pattern, don't worry about it. Go, let them, suggest to them that they go 10 to 1, 10 to 2, 10 to 3, 10 to 4, 10 to 5, and they use that pattern. Because when they're counting and they're going up beyond 20, it's better to get them to use those, because then they know exactly which number they're talking about. They know that 10 to 2 is a 1 and a 2. They know 10 to 3 is a 1 and a 3. So we know of no even 11-year-old child who still says 10 to 1. All of a sudden it fits into place and they're like, oh,
yes,
yeah, I can learn it now.
Yes. And that's why we leave that. And when we're going up in the tens, we go 10, 20, all the way to 100. And we don't say at 100, we say 100. And that's really important, because you're actually putting a number to the hundreds, because later on they'll be going 200, 300.
And then they'd be going, we wouldn't say 101, we'd say 101,
Yeah.
102, 103, and so on.
Yeah.
That was something that suddenly struck Anne and I when we were working with children that were struggling.
Yes.
Because to us it means the same thing. But actually the difference between saying 100 and 100 means a little click, a little link goes on in a child's head, which if you say it 100, and we've all done it, 99, 100, it doesn't help them make those links. It's just little things like that, and then a child gets left in a bit of a fog.
Yeah.
So after that, we do counting in steps. We start with 2s, 5s and 10s, and then we do larger steps, 25, 50s and 100. And basically, that's us done with counting.
Absolutely.
And as I say, that goes up to
The blue level.
The blue level.
Which is actually quite high up the ladder.
So, what does counting help us with? Here we go. And basically that's it. That's why counting is so important. It comes in all those areas of maths. And without a good basis in counting, your child will be struggling.
Yeah. So what you thought possibly was just a little side thing, oh, my child can do this. Actually, it's crucial. Absolutely crucial.
Which is really why we've made a little video about it, because it's one of those things that looks really small and inconsequential and actually has huge impact in maths learning. Yeah. So there you go. That's Anne and Pam do counting.
Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.